Just as the Poles were able to enter a war due to an event, they've been knocked out of one due to one. Casimir IV was assassinated. And as far as I can tell, we have Jean III. Apparently that's the Counter Sobieski here. I'm not familiar enough with my Polish history to know him by his first name. But that aligns between the dates. He's in his majority, so that's not a problem there. Gotta find my rules again. These guys get stuck in there and they cause problems. But that puts us to the commercial phase. When the diplomacy phase comes through, Poland's going to have to offer a status quo peace. Russia has the right to still pursue a war through Poland, but Poland may actually break their alliance with Russia in order to prevent that. Or they may threaten to do so in order for Russia to offer, say, a white peace or something. Essentially, the status quo is going to be a white peace because no war happened, so nobody's conquered any territory, and certainly nobody has claim on anything that they'd conquered. Commerce-wise, Holland decided not to spend to try to get more boats. They've got a lot of boats on play. They went for their double production this time, kind of the opposite of last time. They got burned last time in terms of total prestige. France also neglected trying to build another boat because they have one that just came online that'll be playable next turn, and they're having trouble finding a place to play it. Sweden collected no money, and they had a few bucks left, so they spent one to prevent themselves from getting any decrease. Since they're the smallest fleet, that's all they have to spend. But they had a crisis of confidence and lost one of their trading fleets. They're down to a structure of 3 now. Let's see who else is out here. France actually exceeded England's money, but because of this extra boat they built last time, it's kind of a weird situation the way it goes. You basically have 2 turns where you have to pay for that boat in terms of structure. Because of that extra boat, they're as big as England commercially, so they didn't get any big bonus except they paid double, so they got a point off that. And England didn't take a penalty either. Other than that, nothing too exciting there. Then we go to the big diplomacy phase. Poland has to offer the status quo. Got to figure out what's up with Russia. Okay, so here's our effect. Poland has decided Russia's doing poorly enough, with 99 points only, that they're willing to not violate their treaty, which would have cost them 3 prestige, and allow Russian troops transition through Poland. So there's going to be a Russian-Austrian war. There's not much Russia can gain from this, but they can take a victorious peace, and they can get some significant points off of it. So they can steal money from the Austrians. They can do a number of different things, and it's possible that Russia may float Poland some future consideration for this, or maybe part of the peace treaty will involve some cash or something going to Poland. Can't give them prestige, but alright. I don't know if there's any reason to do any other diplomacy. No one really has a right to start a war at this point, or a desire. They would have done it last turn had they had such. So we'll jump to the minor. Too different from last time, basically modifications to it. England made a big bid on Hanover again. This time they got away with it and ended up getting it. And Sweden and Holland again fought over the Palatinate. Prussia decided to stay out. They just don't have a lot of money. They got to kind of sleaze one, and the things they're interested in are the things other people were bidding on. So Holland ended up getting yet another miner. So they're at 3 of them. Oh, 4. Sorry. They have Oldenburg as well. And now they have the Platinum. And when I'm on my game, I can do all that pretty quickly without thinking. I don't have to work too hard on it. So now we're going to, if I can find my bookmark thing. Yeah, this is what I mainly use my tweezers for, I guess. We're going to the political phase wherein the purchases are going to be done and taxation and such not. And, you know, poor Austria, right? So as we're going through the economic, the royal phase, when you buy your units and such not, I've had trouble shifting money because, you know, when the money is shifted, it's kind of a weird situation. This is all happening simultaneously. But there, at the end of this phase, you make a die roll to see if you get to keep your money. Well, Spain chose to throw their extra money rather than roll that die to Austria. That means they have no diplomatic money next turn, but they just feel like allowing Austria to just collapse and be a continuous whipping boy is a bad idea. So Austria had no money to build troops, so they ended up with this money should be in Spain's hands then, because it's excess that Austria had. I don't know how they got it. Anyway, they had no money to build troops, but this isn't going to help much. This can't face the Russian army. It's just Spain throwing money away, and that's why other people weren't doing it. Spain has the biggest interest in keeping Austria alive, though. Not because of anything political, but just because of the dynamics of the geography. They would like to see a powerful Austria on France's borders, not a continuously weakened one. They don't see much they can do for it, though. And they didn't have the kind of power to bring themselves into a war about this, although they may. They may also play chits in favor. I think I'm going to play this in favor of Austria as well. In fact, a lot of people may be interested in making little efforts to hurt the Russians here, but Spain is the most interested in stopping them. Anyway, see, the fact that you can freely transfer just cash in order so that another country can build an army, that kind of negates some of the feeling that I've been having that, hey, maybe there's an underlying really clever system here. So if the only way to help another country was to go into debt yourself and build them 1 unit per turn, which is one way you can do it, and it seems pointless when cash is usually pretty free from the richer powers anyway. And actually, Spain couldn't do that for Austria because they're both rich powers. Well, then I might be saying, you know, that means that economy is not just free money that the governments have to play with. But the fact that I can transport all my excess Spanish money over to Austria in order to, I don't know, get Austria a bigger army, in the end, that just means that that's just money like it is in EU or in a lot of other games. It's not really being restricted by some kind of mechanism. I guess that's one of the things. There's some abstractions or kind of not obviously intuitive things in this game, and it leads me to wonder, hey, is there something really clever going on in there? But when I see that I can transfer the money from Spain to Austria just out of pocket, that I'm not forced to use some sort of mechanism that doesn't allow me to just, you know, use my cash on hand, I feel like I've been cheated. You know, just because I wandered down this mental exercise trying to excuse the game, because the game doesn't make a lot of sense intuitively in terms of how the economics work. Alright, I think I've come to the end of the political phase. I gotta say one thing. with the military building, especially for somebody like France, but in a lot of cases, just I've got a real problem with the whole economic phase, just in terms of the mechanical implementation that I'm performing on it. But beyond that, with the French, because of the mechanics of looking up each unit to try to figure out what it is, I've just kind of said screw that and started picking units at random and building them at random. I mean, in the location they belong at, but I'm no longer able to decide where I want my units because it's too much work. France is a particularly ugly situation because they have a humongous army. You got to figure, well, maybe internal politics is, causing random positioning of units. France actually is wealthy enough to maintain their huge debt of 45. They're paying 9 a turn on that, and still build their army up pretty big. Money is easy to. A richer power has lots of money to spend. Poorer powers don't have a very big army, so they can't build that much. The real limitations, although France reached its limitations here, but if you don't have, a huge debt or something, the real limitation is your build rate. So Spain's only allowed to build 2 units per turn because they're at peace. Although maybe because this is a war turn and they're not, and not a general peace turn, even if they're not involved, they could be allowed to. I don't know. So, and I don't want to look it up again. But the problem that I have is this mechanical one dealing with the rule book. It's not just the separation of the rule book, but it's that I need to look at Rule 15 here for the sequence of play so that I remember to do everything. There are a few things in the rules that I need. Then I need to look here at the depreciation chart. Then, somewhere else, Rule 17 contains the peasant reactions. Now back here, it's possible I might need Rule 16 for recruitment of troops. On the other hand, if I'm interested in leaders, there's another rule somewhere else in the actual military, I think Rule 20, that covers production of leaders, etc. Basically, I'm flying all through the book to find some chart or table or whatever, and that's just pointless. And honestly, they're not all present in the player aids. So even if you had, so you've got rules on peace here, and then some maps and stuff. So there's nothing there. Over here for what a player is going to have, this is all military stuff. Sure, you got the cost of units there. You have a few things here. You have the depreciation. So this is actually much of what I need. I don't think I have the random tables, but if I get the peasant reactions and such, if I got to a certain point of familiarity with the French set of tables here, it might help a little bit. It might bring me up. There was something else. I don't remember. I may give this one up early. I just don't have the will to do this solo, given what there is in it. And it's going to be one hell of a long game if people keep declaring war all the time. You see the Russian army pushing through Poland, spreading out a little bit to reduce attrition costs. They only lost 1 unit. They're getting closer into the Austrian position. This is not going to be over real quickly just because of the length of time. I think the Russians could have positioned themselves on the Polish border during last turn, actually. So they actually kind of drew this out an extra turn. And as we move to 75, or 75. Only 125 more years to go. You see the Russians didn't make it much further. They're wintering in Poland. Whatever. This war may not have been the best thought out thing, and both sides are making kind of mistakes here. The Austrians probably should be trying to put some pressure on the Russians here. I want a status quo peace. You don't give it? Hey, we each lose prestige. No biggie, mine's in the toilet anyway, but you know, you're not as screwed as I am and you're picking on me, you're coming down harder. You know, that's, of course, that attitude would make more sense if Spain hadn't given Austria some cash. That cash might do something. This peace might do something. The huge peasant revolt that the Russians are looking at. Not a revolt yet, but a bunch of unrest. Shit, some of that's in revolt. Oh, you can't get that big a number without it. I'll look it up and change it. The Russians, on the other hand, I had something that they should have... Yeah, well, maybe they shouldn't have entered this war, because the chances are that your prestige isn't going to go up automatically during such war turns. So everybody else is clustered around 15. France is climbing their way back up. But poor Russia and Austria are stuck. They could grow their prestige. Now, Russia's feeling is, I'm going to get enough prestige off the war. But that's why Austria should be charging them three prestige a turn, or 2 or 3, I don't remember what it is. It may only be 2 a turn, for pursuing this. It just was a mistake for them. I'll look to see if there should be a revolt there, in which case maybe some of the Russian army should have gone and squelched. Actually, the chart is completely different. I thought it was just a numerical difference. I don't know why I thought that. Something is, I think. I don't know. Anyway, what we have is 2 revolts. I spread them out for the reason... I'm ignoring them for the reason that, hey, if Russia wins the war, they go away. And they're really not any worse than unrest in terms of pursuing a war that's not near you. They can be an annoyance to your armies, and I don't know. I could have picked better places for them. Places, if I pick them up here, they wouldn't... This isn't here. They wouldn't affect anything. Because this one unrest 2 revolts. Alright. Say, although it has some interesting game effects, I really hate the mechanism of the remix counter in this game. Interesting events showed up. A famine in Turkey, a plague in Austria, but most interesting, an ethnic revolt of the Irish against England. And, well, that's all canceled. They get stripped away. And, you know, I had to hunt down pieces. Something got taken off the board. The Irish unit got removed. It's just, I don't know. It's really, really inconvenient to the play of the game to be in that kind of, you know, situation where you go through this whole series. And now I've got to do it again. And it could end up canceling again for whatever value that is. It's one of those situations, you know, emotionally I'm having a hard time facing the game, so I'm going away. I'm taking lots of breaks. But, you know, something like that happens, and it just makes it all the worse. I just want to get away from this, you know. So I look and I say, well, the hell with it. I'll do the economic phase. I don't feel like facing it now, you know. And that's just so much with this game. Is just, there's too much mechanical action going on, and not enough real enjoyment, and too much of that mechanical action is looking to find some charter table. Again, it would be improved by that, but there are annoying factors like, hey, draw all the events one at a time, and then after you record them and figure them out, because, you know, you can't possibly memorize them all or set them in a, you know, I mean, you want to kind of react as things are going and think about them and everything. The game would be even less pleasant if I, say, drew all the events out and then resolved them, trying to resolve them all at once. Certainly a bunch of players could draw simultaneously and each look up their one event. Of course, everybody needs their own rule book for that. Or, well, in the original And this would be much better than the rule book. In the original, everybody would need a copy of this. And usual fine AWE standards of printing. It looks like it was run off on a photocopier. All right, I'm going to go take a break. I got the random events phase done, and that's... People had saved up decent money in their royal companies, and they're not trying to build more boats at this point. It's beginning to look like boats may not work very well because you're going into marginal areas. You're not going to get the increased prestige off that. Of course, you still have to compete with everyone else. But most people came to the consideration, Spain is the only person who wants to build boats, and they don't have the cash for it. They have a couple of slots that only they can operate in. Okay. So, because of high savings from last turn, Holland was actually able to bump their way up to the big 36 buck payoff. And they actually have enough they could build a boat, but then they couldn't have paid off if they succeeded. So they're holding that in hands. They had an extra boat. They got very lucky on the charts as well. You can see they won some three-way competitions there. So they're going with the high competition in order to try to reduce the shipping. Now, all this means is each person who didn't manage to pay 3 times their structure, which is everyone else, is going to roll a die, and on a 5 or a 6, they lose a ship. But that will make all the other ships more profitable. And England and France both lost ground. In some sense, the purpose of shipping is kind of hard to discern. And I mean, the only real reason, well, maybe it's not. The only real reason is to boost your prestige. Well, you might be able to do that if you're a good country like France. You know, France doesn't have a whole lot of income. So if we look at them, they have a cereal and a wine. If they went exclusive down to 2 boats, though, what would they end up at? And that might be their better choice. That would get them $1 for the wine because they have a tax with exclusive, and $1 for the cereal. So they'd get $2 with 2 ships. They'd never gain anything from it. So there's no point if they went exclusive to even have, if they went to this minimalist setup, to even have a company anymore. It's just added burden in terms of, you know, the effort you have to put into the game. In some ways, this is my favorite part of the game, which just shows you, I mean, there's not much to it, and it's kind of annoying and mechanical. But it has the lowest effort for payoff for me out of the things that there are in it. The rules... The 2 rules, here's why, the 2 sections of the rules that you have to look at. You just have to look at 2 pages for this whole section, the way I do things. And, you know, very, very little effort, and it's kind of cool to watch. But it doesn't have a lot of effect on the game. Only people who have the potential to make a lot of money off of their companies can put out a big dividend are going to get a bonus here. The leading country is going to get a bonus. So challenging for the lead makes sense, and challenging for high-value territories makes sense because every now and then you'd get a prestige. Of course, every now and then you might lose one too if you're stuck in the competition. So overall, it's not having a lot of effect on play. It's just a few victory points. The real game is keeping your prestige up, probably through military action, which means we're going to just have war after war after war as people try to boost their way forward. Probably more wars than historically happened. Okay, so for the political phase, Austria indeed made Russia pay too, offering a status quo which can't possibly cause anything. Compromise would have been a possibility, but man, when you start looking at those, they're kind of ugly. With Russia's refusal, Turkey kind of leaned over and said, you know, you hold out this turn, and I'll come down on Russia's ass like an avenging angel if you want. We can make an alliance. Yeah, that'd be sweet, because that protects the Turkish areas. But Austria's not entirely opposed to this idea. They feel like what Russia did was completely dicky, whereas what Turkey did was to be expected. Of course, Russia has an ally in Poland. This could really widen greatly, and that's the one fear that Turkey kind of has for this. Alliance miners, we're out of miners that are worthwhile. Rome and Switzerland are left. And Malta. Malta's got some value. If you've got the naval control in the Mediterranean, you can use it. So the Spaniards might just throw a buck into Malta that I didn't put in. I don't know. I'm so disheartened with this that I'm sure they have a bonus. Yeah, they have a +3. They have a +3 for Rome, but they can't use Rome in a war. 6, 7, 8, 9, they get nothing. All right. No one else is going to go for Malta. Holland protected theirs, and England overbid them with $4 on Portugal. But, you know, they're basically rolling it, needing an 11, I think, 10 or 11, to just disassociate Portugal from Holland. They're not going to get them for that. And it's really, really tough for England because they've got a smaller navy than Holland, and there's not much you can do as England in that circumstance. All right, we'll move to the war phase. And yeah, I've slowed down to like almost not playing essentially. Okay, after income, let's see. Austria again has no cash, but Spain floated them $6 or so. They built, actually more than that, $7. They built up a couple of units and some artillery, hoping to last it out. Turkey is not offering them any money because Turkey doesn't particularly want Austria to succeed here. They want Austria to need them. They want that alliance before they're willing to give the cash. You can give cash without an alliance. A lot of naval building and some kind of naval, I don't know, well, I don't know what to call it, but Prussia built itself a navy. Turkey tried. Basically, everybody's got all their troops built. It's time to build something else. Poor Russia is actually in trouble. They can barely, because of all these revolts, support their units. And I forgot to make a roll to see if they start getting into trouble here. They may end up losing more provinces on their taxation on this turn. And if that happens, they'll have to raise their taxes, and that becomes a spiral downward in terms of revolts and unrest. Which pretty much means if they can't win the war this turn, and if it looks at all ugly, if it looks like Turkey's coming in, they probably want to arrange a white peace, and this whole thing was kind of pointless. The military phase, the Austrians made the odd choice to withdraw into Prague, which was sieged successfully. And now Russia actually owns all of this territory here. They've got to push forward. There's a diplomacy phase in the fall, but remember, no politics phase, so you're not allowed to actually perform any alliances or do anything new, which I find kind of weird. The Austrian army will come back, and, you know, we'll see what we can do. But basically, this was a way to deny the Russians any points for a big battle. Was they tried to escape, and then they fled into the castle, into the fortifications. So we'll see. And the Russians were unable to bring the Austrians to a fight. Had to withdraw to winter quarters after the Austrians took their attrition and whatever as well. Austrians used the corruption chit. Now there was a problem with this chit to prevent a unit from moving. It's very easy to corrupt Russian units or a Russian stack and prevent it from moving, but you need money to do it. Luckily, Turkey had a pile of money, and they said, you know what, I'm in favor of you not being destroyed at this moment. I just wasn't willing to fund your army before we have an alliance. I'll slip you the money that you need for this die roll. And Austria was like, cool. So it was only one Russian army going down there. That might have been an advantage. They probably should have fought it, but they chose not to. All right. Now, here's a weird thing. Russia would have played this religious fanaticism shit had they had what looked like a good battle about to start. That would allow them to increase their PR from the battle, plus or minus, to tell you the truth, but they thought they were going to win. Although I don't know how likely that is to have an ill-trained Russian army facing an about the same sized Austrian army. I'd say the odds actually, well, the Russians had an advantage in Cav, but actually the Austrians have the artillery here at this point. Anyway, we'll finish up this year with life and victory point. Oh, two big effects. One, everybody moved on the balancing table, so the people at war got advantages. I had forgotten to mark the temporary for the peace acceptance. Karl Mustafa is a new Turkish general. That's one reason for Turkey to have waited until this turn anyway. They get a guaranteed 2-point general. They get to place him on the board. No, he'll be hidden. No, they get to place him on the board. Face up. And let's see. We've got a new Russian monarch, Fedor III. Has no effect on anything. So we move into 76. We got life checks that had to be made for Reuter as well as Alexis, who did die. Basically, though, because it's a war turn, they don't die automatically. He'd have a couple more years if it was a peace turn anyway. The random events phase taught me another rule that I missed. We have a few things. A famine in Turkey, which I don't think is going to affect them. They have a lot of cash on hand, so they'll be able to fund their big army and march in. Holland grabbed themselves a minister. They randomly got a foreign minister, which I think is the most likely. We've got a public event here, which is what taught me a new rule. This is an attack on the colonies. The French colony here, Pondichéry, is, yeah, I'm sure I mispronounced that, is under attack by the natives. And there's 3 native militia strength units going in against it. The thing that I missed, though, is that all of these colonies have a 1-point militia in them, kind of like EU. And that's was important because the Spaniards just conquered one with just one regular regiment without much trouble. That can't happen. So there's going to be a battle round phase there. Then there becomes a siege. I think this can only happen in war turns, I hope, because otherwise I don't know what you can do about it. Then there becomes a siege, and if the siege wins, the French will lose some prestige. So they've got to actually go handle that, assuming that the natives win the battle, the first battle. Well, I don't know. They besieged the fort. Now that makes me wonder, did I miss, is there an intrinsic fort to each colonial dot? God damn it, I'm going to have to check all kind of stuff. This is my fault, but it's hard to remember all the things in a game like this. For the life of me, I can't find any damn rules on forts here in the colonial colonies. Now, the rules on the colonial dots are spread all throughout the set of rules. I found several places where they're mentioned. Nothing that seemed to mention a fort. So I don't know what to talk about here. I don't know if there is some intrinsic fort for this, or if I'm missing a rule, or if there's the assumption that if there is a fort, they besiege it, which is what I'm going to take. However, if it falls, the owning power loses 2 PP, kind of implies that, well, if there's no forts, nothing happens. So there must be a fort there intrinsically. I don't know. But this is what I'm doing. It's going to cost France 2 prestige. And we've got a situation here. The French have to clear this. They have to defeat the natives in order to regain use of that port. Now, does that terribly matter? Not really. Right now, nobody really cares about that dot because it's one of 3 down here. Now, if England and Holland are both, at war with you, it still doesn't matter. There's still smuggling because it's multiple powers in there. The fact that they have an exclusive, it doesn't matter because there's multiple powers there. The only way this is going to matter is if England or Holland gets control of the other India dot. However, maybe France wants to dispatch a navy out there to deal, some forces out there to deal with it. It's an expensive proposition, though, and it may be better just to leave it in revolt forever. I'm going to take this marker out of here because it's got to go back in the pool. All right, and that's going to put us to the commercial phase, and I've had enough for a bad year for French merchants, fairly good one for the Dutch. They won a number of their competitions. They're constantly in very good shape. Not good enough to do the triple payment again, but France was poor enough that they actually had to make a confidence check, and they only spent $1, so they were lower than people like Sweden. They should have spent more. Had they spent a couple more bucks, they would have, well, they still would have been behind Spain. They would have had to spend $5 to be ahead of Spain. Now, what is their structure is 6. They may have had that. Yeah, they did. But Spain had $10 on hand, so they were probably, they thought they were going to be below Spain anyway. But Spain's holding money, hoping again to increase their fleet structure so that they can get this extra buck a turn. It's not absolutely clear what the value is, right? If you have more high-valued areas and less fleets, a couple of high-valued areas that you score and less fleets, you get some significant advantages. Spain's got a serious problem, though. They've got kind of the cool advantage of access to that art market there. I don't remember. The tissues doesn't seem to be worth it for them. That's just a $2, as is the wine. But they'd make an extra $1 off of each of those. At best, that covers the extra structure, though, so it may not be worth it. They also have this penalty, sort of, for the gold. That gives them extra cash, which they've been able to float to Austria for whatever value it is. But it's not really helping them in the economic sphere. It might be worth spending a prestige and dropping to free trade, except for the fact that I don't think they're allowed to. I think they and Poland are forced, unless someone enforces a treaty on them, to hold their current status, the exclusive and free trade, respectively. Anyway, the exclusive status more or less means that Spain is not going to collect a lot of money. Actually, they would rather have tax than free trade. Tax would give them the advantage of collecting money off of things that maybe they're not going to service, while still allowing them to bring decent money in with trade elsewhere. Anyway, what we had was French dropped 1, didn't lose a fleet. England went up 1, Holland went up 2, I guess. On to the political. I'll talk about a pointless war. So, Austria and Turkey came to an alliance. Austria tried to convince Russia, hey, let's get out of this war prior to the alliance. How much they would trust such a deal, they don't know. But they did not want to make this alliance with Turkey. In fact, I give points to each power. After the alliance was formed, though, they came back and said, look, you don't want Turkey in this war. Let's have a white peace. And Russia's accepting that. So we're essentially at the end of the war. Let me look at the sequence, make sure I'm getting this right. So at this point, Turkey could conceivably still declare war on Russia. Russia's got to pull back into Polish territory, though, and that doesn't sound terribly valuable to the Turks. So they're gonna let this go. They're not in particularly good situation. Except, see, they have this famine, except for the fact that Russia's got some economic problems, but they're willing to let it go. At this point, they don't really have tremendous claims on Russia. There's not much more that Turkey really wants in the world at this point, I would think. They just thought they could get some score off this, and, well, protecting Austria doesn't seem like a terribly good idea, but they thought they could run up their own score against the Russians again. And that's going to put us to the economic phase. Now, one interesting thought it just came to mind, and then I came back to play because of this, and then realized, gee, I didn't say this. I'm playing an MMORPG right now, and a little glitch in it caused me to die. No big deal, you recover somewhere, but it was I end up recovering in an annoying place, and it kind of discourages me. It's kind of along the lines of there being difficulty dealing with the roles in this. You know, it's the same kind of thing. When something jumps in the way, I'm just like, fuck it, I don't want to do it for a while. I want to avoid it. But, I don't know. And at the end of 76, Vauban's going to show up. He says 0 military leader. He gives a plus or minus 2 to siege die rolls, though, I believe. So he'll be a useful addition to the French in terms of investing fortresses, or defending them for that matter. Modifications here. Victory points came out. Right now, Spain is at 206, Poland's at 204. Oh, here's the big guys. Turkey at 217, Holland at 214. Whereas at the lower end, we're below 100 still. Big swings are available here. Guess we move into another peace turn, because there's nothing going on now. No deaths, nothing too exciting here. Up it goes.